And all right, welcome everyone to episode 5 of the Going 5 Hole podcast, Reboot. I'm your host, Mike, and my co-host, as always, it's Dennis. So, and joining us again as a special guest, say hello to Alex.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Dennis. Hey, fans. How's everyone doing?
Hey, Al. How are you?
Good, man.
I'm good. Yeah, I mean, this podcast was supposed to be quite the doom and gloom, and this one probably will still be. But man, I don't even want to say I was riding a roller coaster of emotions after the Carolina series, because that would imply that I'd had to be up and at any point have been elated. So I will say I was riding the submarine of emotions, because I was just continually going deeper and then continually going deeper. Obviously, some things have happened for the future of the New York Rangers, more or less good, some of them bad, but more or less the overall feeling is good. But we will get to the good later, because we all know you're here for the bad.
Can I just start this off by saying how wrong all of us were with our predictions?
I did not think the Rangers were going to win. I really didn't, but I didn't want to be the one guy on here to be the pessimist, because I didn't want that to be.
Even if you really deep down thought they weren't going to win, I don't think anyone thought we were going to get swept.
No, I thought for sure maybe like a 5-game series, maybe.
Yeah,
4, but
I thought it was going to be a long series either way.
So let's start there. The Rangers got, for the lack of a better word, their shit pushed in 3 games, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They did not look good. There wasn't many positives, but so I'm going to start right there. I'm going to start with a little bit of a positive here. I don't know if I necessarily have one, but I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to go to Bruce here. Is there anything from that series that you took away as a positive, as little as it may be?
Yes. That Capo Caco looked like a completely different player, a much improved player from the shutdown in March. Whatever work he did over the pause, or over the, 4.5 months, it shows, because he looked like a completely different player. He looked like he had way more confidence. He looks like he's just better. He looked better on the puck. And if there was any positive to take, it's that going forward, he looked like the little bit of the real deal that we were expecting. And the comparison I made was his kind of development, like Shevchenko. Wow, I'm butchering his fucking name, even though I've heard it a million times.
But stupid American.
I know, but honestly, it's looking like that. And if there was one thing to be excited about, I think it was him just showing. Obviously, the goals weren't there for anybody, but if there was a positive to take, I think it was Capo Caco. Just he looked like that second overall pick.
I agree with that, and I actually have seen people saying his development has been handled similarly to that of Svechnikov, not whatever you said. I don't even remember. But, Al, same thing, anything different? I mean, if you go with Kako, I think that's obviously a correct answer. I don't know if there was anything else you took away.
That would have been my go-to if you asked me first.
Right.
But if I have a backup thing, I actually think Brendan Smith wasn't that bad, if that's what you want to say.
Right.
Not that, I think we saw all throughout the season that he was kind of a liability at times, and I didn't see that in this series at all. So I didn't mind that. And so if we're talking about maybe next year when a couple guys are ready to move up, maybe Keandre Miller, maybe Nils Lundqvist, and we're shifting guys around on the defensive side, maybe Brendan Smith is the guy that sticks around as the 6th defender instead of Mark Stahl.
I'm not entirely sure what his contract is, if it's up at the end of the year.
He still has one more year on that contract.
Still got one more year?
Yeah, him and Stahl both. And then also you still do have that flexibility of being able to put him on the 4th line wing if you have to. But
correct. I think for me, I think that's a good point. I think he was pretty physical. I think he took a couple boneheaded penalties, but as far as his actual play, it wasn't the worst. It's not as bad as I expected, at least. I don't know if you expect the basement and you get the first floor, it might not be the worst thing in the world. But I think for me, the 2 things I took away were actually sort of kind of not what I expected. Ryan Lindgren looked great. And especially with the way he plays, if you're more of a defensive defenseman, if I'm not hearing your name or I'm not noticing you, that's a good thing. And I can't say like oh my God, he did this, he did that. So he was solid. I don't think he was obviously like a difference maker, but he was good. And I thought for maybe that third game, I thought Truba played pretty well too. He kind of looked more aggressive, and he kind of was jumping up in the play and being that more offensive force that I thought that's what a lot of people were getting. And to be honest, I don't know if I expected that. I really didn't. But as a whole, I think there was – and we are grasping at straws with that. I think Kako obviously is something to be like, okay, that's good. I mean, the time off did him well because like we said in the last podcast, I mean, he had played, his season in Finland. Then he played the World Juniors, went back to his season in Finland, then went to the World Championships, and then immediately came to rookie camp because I believe he was late to the Rangers rookie camp because of the World Championships. I mean, that's a lot of hockey. It's going to burn anybody out, even if you're 18, 19. So now we have to get into the negatives, and there's a lot of negatives to talk about. I took off of work to watch that game on Saturday that they played, and I just was – from the get-go, they just did not look like they had it. Let me pose to you, Al. I'll go back to you. With them, who were you most disappointed in? If there is a possibility, you can not say like it's your fault, because I think I don't think there's anybody to say this is your fault. I think it is a collective from the coaching staff to the players, everything. I think it's completely there. I would just be curious to say who you most disappointed in.
I mean, if I had to pick somebody out, probably Panarin, even though he did have a goal and assist in the series. I felt like at times he was just invisible for a lot of the game, and then would come on and he would have that shift that really did make a difference. But for the majority of the game, I feel like he just wasn't making an impact as we saw throughout the regular season.
Now, do you think that's
not to interrupt? His only goal in the series was on a 5-on-3 power play.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a nice play. It was a really good pass from, I think it was Strom. But do you think that Panarin, not like you said, do you think that's because Carolina did a good job taking him away, or he just didn't look like he had it, or a combination of the two? Like I'm curious what you think with that.
I mean, the playoffs are always a different game too. There's always less space no matter what team you're playing. But like I was kind of saying on the last the preview that we had on the episode, Carolina just is a tough team to break down. I think that was mostly it was just the fact that Carolina wasn't letting them get the space even to a bigger extent than another team that we played against might have had. So I just think a matchup against Carolina might have been the problem for him specifically.
Yeah, I think as a whole, I think it was a bad matchup for the Rangers, and I think more or less the style the Rangers want to play, especially the style that Panarin and them play, that's timing, and that's not going to come back. So that's what was worrisome for me going into that series, and it did prove that the way Carolina played and the way their forecheck was, and them taking away the neutral zone was very effective, and it worked to a T. So, Bruce, let me ask you, what's the thing you're most disappointed in?
I mean, it's not to blame the defense entirely, just because, like, look at Carolina's top guns. They all performed in that series. That top line just destroyed them. I thought as the biggest disappointment for all the hype and how good a year, I thought Tony DeAngelo was awful in all three games. And now, and I know
was dealing with the hamstring.
I know,
injury.
right? I know, but if he's, I mean, if he's unfit to play, then I mean, I know it's who you're going to bring in, but if he's not healthy, it showed. But we didn't know that, so you're assuming he's good to go, and he just looked awful, like all three games, and it's to the point where you're questioning, do you want to re-sign this guy long term, or especially with the cap crunch the Rangers are going to have in the offseason, and we'll get to stuff like that. But it really, I think 2 weeks ago he was a lock to go, yes, you need to re-sign this guy because he's clearly top line defense potential. But now, injury or not, just he looked so bad. There wasn't one redeeming thing he did. And then when he got abused by Aho on that turnover 1-on-1 and at the end of game 3, that just it kind of sealed it for me. He was awful.
I think with the injury, and I mean, my thing with him, and I don't want to get into this, he did not play well, and that was obvious. I don't think the whole Rangers defense as a whole played well. I think what we said, I thought we saw people played. I think Lindgren was good. I think our expectations of Smith were pretty low. He wasn't the reason they lost, but he still is not a great defender. Mark Stahl is just what he is at this point. He's pylon at this point. And I just, for me, I think my biggest thing that I was upset with was the lack of adjustment from Quinn. They were getting – Carolina was forechecking the crap out of them. And neutral zone, and that long breakout pass wasn't there. I know in the first game they kind of switched up a little bit where they put somebody in front of the net to kind of play 5-on-5, which is great. But if you can't enter the zone, it doesn't mean anything to me. So, I mean, personally, I thought Quinn's lack of adjustment wasn't the best, and I understand that that's the way the team was built to play, that's the way the team has played. But that long breakout pass isn't there. And I got so aggravated seeing Tony DeAngelo go behind the net and try to just drill it to the neutral zone over and over and over again. And it just wasn't there. And that, I think, frustrated the crap out of me. And I just – having the team ready to play. And, I mean, it'd be one thing if the Rangers got beat, but, I mean, man, they just didn't even look like they were ready to play. I mean, they gave up a goal on the first shot of the series. And it was a backdoor. And it's not like a flub or whatever, and like whatever it happens. It's like they just got beat from the beginning, the first period of the first game to the last period of the last game. So, like I said, I mean, I don't think that, for me personally, I don't think there's anybody as a whole that I can – I think as a whole we can blame everybody. But for me, it was mostly Quinn. And I think – let me ask this. Let me change gears here. So, you brought up Panarin, Al, and I'll say this. Was Zibanejad also a bit of a kind of not a highlight for you? Like, I didn't think that I just think that neither one of them had the space. I thought Zibanejad was better than Panarin, but I didn't think either one was very good in general.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I just didn't bring up Zibanejad because I think his struggles fell more under how the entire team was struggling, whereas Panarin, I think it was more of him personally. He has the ability to really get us back into a game himself. I know Mika does too, but not to the extent that Panarin does. And I think Zibanejad just he'll struggle if the whole team is terrible,
I think also Zibanejad got abused in the face-off circle by Aho.
Yeah, I agree.
Abused. And usually, like, I don't look at Zibanejad as like this elite face-off winner. I mean, I don't look at him as somebody I think he's above average with that. But man, Aho really just took him to task. So, Bruce, I'll go to you here. What about, did Zibanejad feel like he let you down a little bit too, or was that more or less just like?
And not so much
the
him.
whole team wasn't good.
It wasn't so much him because, again, we've said it. You look at the matchup. You look at the way Carolina plays, and like you said, David Quinn. I agree with that because I thought the Rangers played right into Carolina's hand. They let Carolina control the entire series. I think the Rangers had one good period. That second period in Game 3, I thought was the only time they looked good. And James Reimer decided to be a Vezina candidate for one night. Yeah. And just absolutely just stand on his head, and I think
ultimately candidate or I thought he's won a few.
I thought the way he played, he seemed like he's won at least a couple.
I think. I mean, in terms of forwards, because I said a defenseman, and I know Chris Kreider had a decent third game, but I thought games 1 and 2 he was non-existent. And for a team like this that everyone wants to talk about, young players, Chris Kreider's been there for most of this Rangers run this decade. That should have been one of the guys, especially if you're looking at him as possibly being named the captain next season after he got the contract. That's a guy who I thought.
I'm going to stop you there because for me, I'm going to agree with you because he at the end of the series on like the exit interviews or whatever was really had a lot to say, and I'm like, man, you were a ghost in Game 1 and Game 2, like, and then you decided to turn on Game 3. You sign a guy like Chris Kreider for these situations. And I think he let me down amongst a lot of, like I said. But I was very, very disappointed in the way he played in Game 1 and in Game 2. So, I mean, Game 3, fine, he turned it on. But what have we always said about Kreider? He's streaky. And, like, that's the one thing, especially, too. He's flourished in the playoffs before. But let me go to the big, I guess, elephant in the room here right now. The Shesterkin injury. Because obviously at the time they said it was unfit to play, and you knew it wasn't going to be a COVID thing because it was day-to-day. later on, the fact JD actually said, I believe it was a groin tweak. Now, I think we learned a couple of things. I think when Igor came back in game 3, I think he looked great. I think he looked more than good. I mean, he got hung out to dry in that game, but I was not. I mean, Hank is just not a shell of himself now, especially in game 2. And obviously he can't do it forever. But I'll go to Bruce. Let me ask you: when they announced Lundqvist, did you just go, "Oh no," or was it like, "Okay, maybe we have a chance"?
It's. I mean, you never know. I mean, we said it. Lundqvist played really well against Carolina in the regular season. I know it doesn't matter in the playoffs, but I think when you hear it, especially like right before the game starts, it's like he's a late. It's a late call that he's starting. It makes me hate the non-transparency with the NHL and injuries. Like all they have to do is say, "Well, unfit to play," and there's no explanation given. Like.
Well, it's a HIPAA thing now. It's not.
I get it.
Yeah, the bubble also created problems with the media being able to.
I get it, but it's one of those frustrating things where it's like unfit to play, but it's like I don't. It was just one of those frustrating what are unfit to play how the guy just played the exhibition game 2 days prior. Did he tweak something in practice? I don't need a big explanation. I want did something happen?
Yeah.
Did he hurt himself in practice? Did he fall? Did he trip over, trip coming out of the elevator or something?
That was kind of my reaction. It was I was almost pissed about it. I was like, are you kidding me? This guy it's the biggest game of his career so far.
Right.
And he's just last second not available. Just to add on what I was saying, if the only media that was allowed in the bubble were the NHL media. So we didn't get our normal New York Post info that we would get. There was a couple other guys too that just they had
a couple guys from each team. I think it was the athletic guys were there.
Yeah.
But even still, if they can't report anything, it's what do you know? And you knew because he was in the crowd because everybody's like, well, It might be. It's no, if he had tested positive for COVID,
he'd be gone.
Right.
He'd be out of the bubble.
No, you knew right away that he didn't, but it's just one of those I don't need the exact injury, but something more than unfit to play. And I understand the rule the HIPAA stuff, but it's just what the fuck does unfit to play mean 20 minutes before the game? I think it was more frustrating than anything because and goalies are different. I know hockey players like to tough it out, but if you're a goalie and you tweak something, you're gonna be useless.
I'll just say this: if you have a guy like Lundqvist and obviously Shesterkin's not 100%. I don't think that's the bad decision, especially as a goalie. I can understand where you're coming from that, but if you have a decent backup, I didn't expect Hank to play like that. Let me be honest. No. I think the first game wasn't on him. I think the second he dropped the ball a little bit, and then at that point it's too late. So let me just say this because I just found out we only have 7 minutes left to record this. The biggest takeaway for the Rangers moving forward was what for you, Al? From this series, what did you learn type of
deal? Honestly, I think they're going to have more questions in the offseason than what we even originally were thinking. So we mentioned already signing D'Angelo, but I thought Strome actually wasn't terrible.
I agree with that.
But a guy like that might be a guy, especially, we'll talk about it more later with the upcoming draft, but we might need a center still. It might have made where before I would have thought, hey, D'Angelo might have been the guy we keep and Strome's the guy we walk. It might be flipped now. And I think we also really need to have a good analysis on how our prospects are and are they ready to play yet. So I think that's going to be very important going forward. And just based on what we saw from this series.
I think that's a really good thing, especially your point about Tony D and Strome, because I think a lot of people may have flip-flopped on that. And I understand it is a 3-game sample size and he was hurt, but one thing I will say, I was listening to it was Scott Burnside and Pierre LeBrun's podcast, and they both said that the Rangers have a lot of smaller, undersized right-handed defensemen, and that's not really a recipe for winning in the playoffs. So we'll get into that again. But Bruce, let me ask you this same thing.
I kind of said with Tony D'Angelo, those 3 games, hurt or not, it really brought up a lot of questions about is this the guy you want to spend your money on going forward? like you said, small sample size, but yeah, like I was more, like I said, more like you said, more impressed with Strome, less impressed. It's off-season questions. I don't necessarily have the answers to, because it's just with COVID, you thought the cap was going to go up. Now it's flat. You lose out on a couple mil, man. It goes a long way. And
the difference between signing a player and not a player at that point.
So if you're making, if you're stuck making these tough decisions, you have, whether or not the defensive depth is good or not, you have the defensive prospects coming up versus
Well, I'm
center.
still here.
I know, but oh man, because now he's gonna have to end. Yeah, you're back. I hear your audio. You're good. You're good now. You're back.
There's just to let you know, there's some strong gusting winds in New Jersey tonight. So you might have some issues. I saw a news weather article.
Right. Either that or your wife playing Candy Crush or something like that is messing with me.
Either Clash of Clans or something else.
All right, so let's just end this here.
Yeah, we'll take a quick commercial break. Be sure to click on episode 5, part 2.
Make sure you check out our sponsors.
Malice Auto Body. And that's it.
This coffee is pretty good, but they're in Long Island, so it's probably impossible to get there. But they ship.
You'll never get there.
But they ship, so do that.
We are also sponsored by Ping. Not a sponsor, but
yeah,
did get a cool sticker from them in a recent order.
Nothing's a sponsor. Exactly. Nothing's a sponsor.
All right.
We'll take a quick break. Click on part 2. Bye for now.